And I've been following your career for a while. Heard you also on .NET Rocks and stuff like back in the day. I've been also doing software development for now a couple of decades. Uh, as you've also been in the industry for a long time now as well.
Yeah.
Um, what have you been up to lately?
Yeah. So it's interesting. Our team, so I work on James Montemagno's team at Microsoft. We've moved around a bit, but we do the same thing. So a few years ago, I was mostly focused on .NET community. And then over
Mm,
time, that expanded to DevDiv community. And DevDiv was kind of all across developer division. And then as of this year, unsurprisingly, we're focused on agentic development. So honestly, agentic development is kind of part of everything developers do anyways nowadays. It
yeah.
impacts just about everything. So really it's a community team, and community is a lot of different things. So sometimes like this morning, I've been helping with, I help run a few of the blogs at Microsoft. I coordinate, do editorial review, um, basically manage the blogs. Um, and then also I help run external events. I help run internal events. I write content. Um, this year, I've been focused a lot more than in the past on internal kind of evangelism. Um,
Okay.
and
Yeah.
basically helping, it's a big shift, this kind of agentic development world. It's a big shift for everybody, including people inside Microsoft. And that includes traditional software developers, but then it also includes PMs, marketing, legal,
Mm,
like everybody. And I'm working with a lot of people that are, say, in marketing, have never written code before, and they're writing a lot of code, or they're using a lot of code,
yeah.
that
Yeah.
they,
Yeah.
maybe they're using Scout, or maybe they're using GitHub Copilot. It's semi surprisingly, a lot of people are using Copilot CLI for like PM or marketing roles, things like that. And they're getting a lot done, and they also want to be more, um, let me see, intentional about what they're doing. They're kind of like, okay, things are kind of working, but what can I do a little better? So, so anyway,
Yeah.
we like last week we ran this internal conference. We had, at the numbers, I think about like 3,000 views on this internally, and I think we can do more in the future. But it was pretty cool to see people all across the company coming together and just learning. We had like a who's who of all the top people. We had
Yeah.
keynote with Scott Hansen, and then just all kinds
Of
of
course. Yeah.
real sessions. I learned a ton, honestly, and I mean this is my job, but I still learned a ton. So uh,
Yeah, but that's kind of what this is, right? When you
mhm.
teach, you learn, and you keep learning. And also, this stuff is so new, and it keeps evolving so quickly, right?
It
So,
does. It really does, and it kind of helps to have a perspective that learns from history. And we take our existing experience in with good software development practices and good, like this is what a good program should look like, and this is the kind of code that's okay to just do a quick one-off, and I don't care what the code looks like. And for this other project, I really do care what the code looks like, and I want tests, and I want quality in a software development like life cycle and things like that. So we take all that, but we also have to take a lot of humility in now, because
yeah,
things are changing, and a lot of things that I think were accurate a month ago are not anymore. And so I always have to kind of take a lot of that into both my intuition, and then when I'm talking to people, hey, here's what I think is the right way to do this, or here's what I think
yeah,
this feature set is, but it may be different. So,
yeah. It's that's a very strange thing. So, I do a lot of GitHub Copilot workshops for developers now for
uh-huh.
customers, and every time I do one, the day before I just open everything up again, and then I take a look at where the buttons are now, or which
Mhm.
new buttons are there. And almost always there's one clever guy or gal there, and she says, well, you know what? No, it's probably more like this. And I'm like, yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah.
Yeah, a new insight. Because also the question is, we're just talking into a text box, basically, right?
Mhm.
So it's not rocket science. It is natural language. They made it super easy for us to use this stuff. But then everybody's asking themselves, like, how can I use this better? What's the magic sauce? And then
Yeah.
there's all these things like skills and custom instructions and custom agents and MCP servers.
Mhm.
But also, those are not rocket science. It's all markdown stuff. But
It,
what do you
it really
think? Are they
yeah.
still very important or not so much anymore?
I think they're a lot more important than we've given them credit for. And I
Mm,
think that's becoming more obvious now when people are caring about and being charged at the token level.
mm,
And in the past, we were all operating in startup mode. And it's like, who cares about tokens? Just
yes.
have a loop run all weekend and just burn 1 million tokens. And I think now we're starting to think more about like, how can we be more efficient? I've written a lot of MCPs. I've been writing a lot of skills. I'm also like doing a lot of things with, like workflows and, GitHub actions and,
Mm, yeah.
really trying to think about anything that I can do deterministically, do with an
Yes.
exe or a script or something. So like just this past few days, I was writing up a report on this conference and I was like, hey, I want a bunch of screenshots from all these videos. And the videos are all in SharePoint and so but I was like, hey, I could use AI and just say, please go get a bunch of screenshots. But then I thought about it. I'm like, wait, this is super inefficient and I don't know what I'm going to get. And it may run for a half hour and then give me trash. So instead, I had it write a script, get screenshots from 5 and 15 minutes into one video.
Mm,
Okay, that looks good. Now do it for all the videos. and and
yeah.
so I'm just really focusing a lot more. And that's something I like as a tech evangelist really think is something I want to be speaking about and communicating better is like, hey, um, things getting the right balance between what an LLM is good at and what deterministic code is good at is really important. It's going to save you money, but it's also going to give you more predictable results, higher quality results too.
Yeah, and yeah, higher
Getting
quality equals less tokens usually.
exactly, because
Yeah.
you're not repeating work.
Yeah.
We've all we're going through this growing up phase of working with LLMs. And the first kind of
Yes.
hello world is like you talk into a chat box and it actually gives you back useful results. And you're like, whoa, this is crazy. Like I remember closing every chatbot for years because they were stupid. And then all of a sudden, one time on Chat GPT, people are like, hey, try this Chat GPT. And I did something and it worked. I'm like, this is crazy. But then after a bit, we think, hey, this is not super productive. Typing, like for instance, I would way back in the day, like type chat, write this function. No, that's not right. Do it again. No, do it again. And
Yeah.
and so that's a really like naive way of doing it, right? And then we're kind of growing up over time to I started working more with like do some things and do pull requests and have the pull requests do a code review, and then over time it's like, hey, what can we automate in terms of those GitHub actions and you know just working with this whole kind of really kind of seeing it as more of like an outsource or like you're working with another, someone else is writing code. That's fine. We've done this and this isn't completely new to collaborate with another developer,
No.
but now let's put quality into the process. Like I want unit tests. I want like rubber duck style reviews, different people review each other's code, etc. So
Yeah,
yeah,
so it's basically like you're outsourcing it to uh, some country, your software development, right? So
exactly.
so you're not sure what you're gonna get back, and you don't know about the quality, not really.
Right, and I've done this in a lot of other jobs in the past, and sometimes the problem is my fault because I didn't
Yeah,
give clear specs, right?
that's
I
it. Yeah,
didn't and so, like, it really comes down to instead of saying, "Build me a website," it's, "Hey, I want" I'll actually start now with a PRD, a product requirements document, and I'll say, "Here's," I'll work with AI to write a document in Markdown with very clear, like, here's what I want. Here are some references. Here's some similar. existing projects, websites, open source software, or whatever. Here are the acceptance criteria. Here's the, initial phase delivery, and then future possible things. And so really hammer that out, and then say, okay, iterate on phase one, right? And the
Yeah.
quality is so much better because it doesn't go off and build me something in PHP because I never told it, right? So, if I
Yeah.
actually say, no, I want it in this language, I want with this testing format, I want this, color scheme, whatever, right? So,
Yeah, exactly. And that is already spec-driven development, kind of,
hmm
right? Because you make
hmm
a spec and then you do the thing. And we should have always been doing this.
exactly. And that's part of the thing is that, AI is good at predictable grunt work. So things that are frustrating and boring. And that's
Yeah.
things like, you know, writing up specs and writing unit tests and, writing documentation and doing architectural reviews for duplicate code and, all these things that are
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
hard work. They're just boring and we all hated it. So we didn't do it enough, And so
Yeah.
now it's a time where we can just put that in the process and start integrating that.
Yeah, yeah. So I see that a lot in companies as well, where they have to basically go back into their processes and mature themselves with
hmm
more specifications, more unit tests, more quality controls around what they're doing. Because now they hire these outsourced developers who work somewhere in a data center in the US somewhere, and you
Yeah.
don't know what you're going to get back. And usually it's amazing, but you need some more controls. So we
Yeah.
all need to learn to grow up. So, and we're all learning because it's super early.
And on the one hand, like part of that sounds really boring, right? But
Yeah,
then the nice thing is that allows me to focus on the fun part, which is the creative part. So like on, weekends and evenings, I've built a game for my Quest 3 VR headset. I've built a iPad stationary bike app. I've built games with Godot. I've been building just like websites, all kinds of fun stuff. And I get to focus on like, what is the game script? Is this game
yeah,
fun? How can I, add a zombie mode to my biking app? Like whatever, and that's the fun part. And I have tons of unit tests and I have tons of specs and I have tons of quality steps so that I don't have to think about that stuff. So,
yeah. And what's your favorite, let's say, modality to use GitHub Copilot in this case?
whew, I bounce around a lot, and partly because that's my job. I need to be able to
Mhm.
keep up with everything. Lately, I have been using a lot of Copilot CLI and VS Code. And partly that's because of just like the different projects I'm working in.
Mm.
But of course, I use the new GitHub app. I've been really liking the canvases in there, which are pretty fun. I made a canvas for Squad. I
Mm.
don't know if you've looked at Squad, but I made like a dashboard for Squad and it keeps track of all the different things. And then, of course, Visual Studio. I use Visual Studio a lot for things like modernization.
Yeah,
Is really good at that stuff. But I'd have to say a lot of the time I'm just using Copilot CLI with Squad. For my personal projects, I've been really liking using Squad and like dialing in um, the different squad members and, having like ones that are very focused with all the skills. The front end designer has say like specific skills and the tester has, and so then they can be very efficient, use just the right model. Um, and it's really fun to just kind of set it all up and then say like implement phase 3 and then go have a
yeah,
coffee
yeah.
and come back.
Yeah, yeah. For listeners who don't know what Squad is, it is kind of this open source framework by Brady Gaster.
Mhm.
He still owns it, I think.
He runs it. There's I think Tamir and there's several other people that contribute to it.
Mm.
Um, and it's based on, I think there's some other kind of similar things in other AI kind of,
Yeah,
there's, I think Gastown and some things like that. The general idea is uh, you have agents in it working together in a team, like collaborative team, and you have a coordinator And then you have specific roles. So you'll have like a front end dev and a back end dev and an architect and a tester. Um, and I've seen some kind of people say, "Oh, that sounds silly," and I kind of get it, and I kind of like once I work with it enough and got it tuned in just right for my projects, I get it. Like it really. And the important thing is that LLMs are constrained by context, right? There's only and so over time, as you keep chatting back and forth, you're building up all this context, and then in order to like when that context gets full, then we have to compact it, and so then we lose some of the information because we've compressed down that chat. And so over time, we're kind of always battling this problem of like so much context going back and forth in the conversation. And what's really cool with these sub agents is that we can really focus the context. So I can have issues assigned to a sub agent, and the sub agent is not concerned with any of the other things. Like if the front
Yeah.
end agent doesn't worry about other things, they can ask the other agent or it can get a summary from something. But and also it can be very tuned as far as what the skills are, what MCPs it works with, what uh, language model it's using. And so because of that, like for instance, if I have a scribe role or a Git, a role that's just focused on my Git history and things like that, it can be a very fast model. It doesn't need to
Yeah.
be super smart. I don't need to waste tokens, and I can also use a very tuned model, that's very quick. So, so that's one of those things again, where just like in the real world, you wouldn't just hire one super genius to build your project for you. You'd probably hire a team, and the team would have, people, and also, you can tell I'm getting all excited about this, but it is like you can have like the agents can learn over time, and you can say like, "Hey, I didn't like what you did with all the purple gradients there. This is the style I'm going for. I want you to remember this." And that specific agent will make that note. So,
Yeah.
it sounds like I'm selling Brady's project, and I do like it, but it's really more of a pattern. And, it's just built using Markdown and skills and, like it's just a pattern that you can use anywhere, GitHub Actions and things like that. But the idea is like, hey, if we orchestrate things so that we've got, these are front end skills, these are back end skills, these are architectural skills, testing skills, et cetera, then you can split that off and you can be more hyper focused with that. So,
Yeah. 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 It's very cool. And it's been out for quite a while. So I really am wondering if this will ever get absorbed into the product as a feature or some sort of template or something like that, or a spin-off product. I
I
don't know.
yeah, I know that the teams talk together a lot, and there are some specific features in Copilot for like fleet mode and some of
Yeah.
these other specific. They enable the general ideas, but they're not. And so I know that they're kind of figuring out because they also Squad is kind of prescriptive and it may not
Yeah.
fit in specifically with some people. So at a product level, I think they're trying to get that sort of balance right. But I think generally across, not just the Copilot world, but the AI development world, that's a thing that it's not the right thing for every project, but it's the right thing for a lot of projects. So,
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's interesting. So we're evolving so incredibly fast. Like,
mhm.
yeah. So if we zoom out now, right? So we have this whole thing that now developers have a new tool basically to be more productive. Companies as well, where they can stick AI into applications with I don't know, with Foundry, Microsoft Agent Framework, things like that, to
Mhm.
create a chatbot or something more interesting, perhaps. We see all this happening also with customers that we talk to from our side. It's very interesting. But if we zoom back out, right, this is one major technology evolution, revolution. We've
Mhm.
seen more.
Yeah.
Like back in the day, we had cloud, for instance, was a
If
kind of
people
a new
forget it,
thing.
I love that you brought that up. I'm sorry to jump in, but this is something I've been thinking about too lately, is people act like this is out of like we've never had this happen before. We've never gone
Yeah,
through this. And the cloud revolution was huge, and there were
yeah,
a lot of different ones over time, even going 16 to 32 to 64 bit and like,
Yeah.
open source. And I mean,
Yeah.
we've gone through a lot of big software revolutions. Outsourcing was a big thing for a while where it was like, oh no, this is going to change everything.
Yeah.
Um, and, even the internet, kind of the cloud wave went in some big phases and, like things like, um, oh, I don't know, the JavaScript revolution, where
Yeah.
JavaScript all
Yes.
of a sudden was running everything. We're like, how did that happen? So it is important to like take it seriously and to really kind of like not ignore it and just say like, I don't do AI. Like that would be the same as saying like, I don't believe the internet exists or, like
Yeah.
I think you have to recognize that it's there, but also, um, I don't know, put it in context and think about like, hey, we've gone through change. The whole software development industry has been a period of rapid change, over the
Yeah.
past couple decades.
So,
Yeah.
so we had big ones, right? Like clouds, big one.
Hmm.
We still have, still companies that are still hybrid or moving to the cloud, for
Yep.
instance, for all sorts of reasons. We had smaller ones like big data, smaller
Oh
ones.
yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
remember the big data?
Yeah.
Mobile first was also one of the things.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
The metaverse kind of thing that never
Hmm.
really did anything.
Yeah.
Uh, and now there's this thing. So do, do you think this is different profoundly than, let's say, cloud? Because that's kind of a big one.
That is a tough question. I do think it is profoundly different, but I think some of it is that this has more of an opportunity to accelerate. Um, cloud can, so for instance, a cloud was an architectural change and
Mm.
speed kind of continued to go up and we have more computers networked together. Um, the cloud, some of the patterns and things have changed over the past decade or so, but it's not like a fundamentally different cloud now than it was 10 years ago, say. Whereas large language models, I do feel like we've been growing in terms of what the models do. I kind of feel like we're on this edge of like some sort of architectural shift and where it's likely to keep accelerating more. And then I do wonder about things like, quantum as quantum gets thrown into the mix with AI, right? And I think there are some huge opportunities like when the math nerds all of a sudden are like, hey, we found a way to make things twice as fast or twice as
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah,
So I feel like we're in a way kind of scratching the surface of what large language model technology is.
yeah,
Um, so I mean that's kind of gut driven. That's kind of a hunch sort of feel, but I do feel like this is a bigger change, partly because software development is all about code. It's implemented in code and everything. And large language models are extremely good at writing code. So it's the whole loop of I'm stuck, go look it up on Google and Stack Overflow, find some code, paste it in. It didn't quite work.
yeah.
Okay, do this. It's instant now, right? And I was thinking about this past, like a week ago, I ran into something that was frustrating me in Power Toys, which is in C++, and or the thing was, and I'm like, I'll just fix it, right? And I like iterated, and of course I was very careful. I haven't written production C++ in a long, long time, but I feel like I actually like got this thing done in a short amount of time relatively. And um, I I guess where I'm going with this is that I feel like we're going to be changing the building blocks of software development using large language models in a way that accelerates more, if that makes sense.
Yeah, yeah,
I'm
that
still
totally.
figuring this out. I don't know the answer, but it just feels a little bit of a bigger shift than some of those other ones were. Some of those too were a little bit style driven, like, hey, it's mobile first. Okay, that's a consumer preference, right?
Yeah,
And it's like, hey, I would like things to work better on my phone. Whereas large language models open up whole new things where like people who aren't even my younger brother is not a trained software developer, and he's building something with Python running on a Raspberry Pi that it's like, this could be a product you could sell, I mean, it's kind of
Yeah.
really a big shift.
Yeah, yeah. I think so too, that it's very different. Because if you look like at cloud, for instance,
Hmm.
that is very deterministic. These are
Hmm.
products that we now sell. You just move your stuff. Your computer is just now over there instead of over there.
Yeah.
And we package it nicely so that you can use it easily. And that kept evolving, of course, but still it's deterministic. You just do it or
Yeah.
you don't.
Yeah.
And now we're in this strange world where we talk to things that predict the next words, and it's non-deterministic. And I think
Yes.
as humans, we have a bit of uh, trouble adjusting to this world of non-deterministic technology that kind of
Hmm.
does stuff, and it can do a lot.
It is wild. And I think intuitively I kept thinking of it. It took me a while to realize it's just text in and text out. There's no like, okay, it acts like it's text in and text out, but it's really doing some other things. It's like, no, it's really just predicting the next token, and
Yeah,
we keep we keep adding layers on top of it with better harnesses and better system prompts and better, corrections and tuning. But at the end of the day, it's just a big predictive model of what's the next token.
yeah. So you mentioned you're teaching this also to non-techies
Hmm.
within the company as well as perhaps also outside of the company.
Yeah. Yeah.
So where's kind of the line of, when do they use, let's say, Office 3, Copilot 365, which is the business version, versus uh, GitHub Copilot, because you can kind of use both, right, for almost anything.
Yeah. That's also a slightly tricky question because, like you said, we have multiple GitHub Copilot some things
Yeah,
too,
yeah.
right? And I feel like what I try and look at what is the most comfortable, easy fit for the thing you're doing right now, right? So like
That's good.
my family, I'll show them Copilot on the desktop or the web Copilot app, um, and then that's a quick, like, I can get started and I can use this basically like a better Google, kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, kind of. Yeah.
So I feel like that's a nice kind of, if you're doing office work, I look at M365 Copilot, and then with more sophisticated users like Scout.
Yeah.
And that's because it's connecting to, company resources and that sort of stuff. And then I do feel like if you're doing anything code related, it really helps to be in an environment that understands a code base. So like that's where GitHub Copilot is really productive because it can figure out the Git history. It has my entire context of files in the solution or project, or folder, right? And like, so that was something where I mentioned my younger brother was building something with Python, and he was doing everything in a really long chat GPT conversation.
Mm.
And that kind of works, but it kind of doesn't after a while
Yeah,
because
yeah.
it loses the context and it doesn't really know. And so I kind of steered him over to working in VS Code
Mm.
and, it's like, look here, now you have all your files in one folder and now I've got a cleaner context, right? So I feel like but it really is kind of a, where do you feel most comfortable? And we got that question internally at that conference was like, hey, you have all these different, do I use Copilot CLI or the GitHub app or do I use VS Code? And it's like, well, get get familiar with the different ones and then use the one that feels best at the time. And I very often will start a project. A lot of the time my flow is I'll just pop into the Copilot, the web app, and I'll say, hey,
Mm.
I'm thinking about this sort of project. Is there something similar already? How would it work? And I'll iterate for a bit and then I'll think, I think I actually want to build this. I'll say, write me a markdown block that I can paste in as a PRD. And then I'll pop into like Copilot CLI and depending if I'm feeling like I'm ready to, where I'm at, I'll initialize a squad and I'll say, here's a PRD, start this project, and
Yeah.
then, get things going. And then after a bit, I'll say, I really want to dig into this code more. And then I'll pop into, VS Code or Visual Studio and like get the whole view of it. So, and then, so I really feel like it's nice to like, you're not stuck in any of them, especially when you're developing code, right? You can bounce around, and so a lot of time I'll have, say, VS Code and Copilot CLI open, and I'll work with both of them because it's all the codes, in the same directory. I've got Git, keeping me safe as long as I'm committing regularly, and so yeah.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
I don't have a super clear, like, I can talk about, well, if you want to if you want to work at the chat level and you want to manage multiple sessions and things like that, you might work with GitHub app more. And if you want to, work more, if you're in a space where command line is kind of feeling simpler, then Copilot CLI. And if you have an existing code base, you might want to pop open VS Code or Visual Studio and kind of, make it easier to see your kind of code context and stuff. But really, I feel like it's just like whenever I feel, yeah, I'm a little constrained here. I'm a little claustrophobic, right? I want to break out. I want to move
Yeah,
to
yeah, yeah.
somewhere that, so,
Yeah.
and GitHub Copilot's with you in any of those places is, like marketing thing I think of. So it's like the same models, the same context, as long as you're preserving things in markdown docs or issues or whatever, it just goes with you anyways. So,
Yeah, yeah, and even sessions sync now to GitHub. So
yeah.
perhaps they can also sync to different clients in a bit.
And, another thing too, there is, well, it feels like this large language model is conscious and it's sitting there and it's in
Mhm.
this chat with you. It really is kind of like a stateless web where every
Yeah,
single chat question that goes in, it's a brand new thing, right? And so
yeah,
in a way, it doesn't really matter as long as I'm preserving my context, my issues, my session state, like you're talking about, then my next chat, even if I switch harnesses and go from CLI to VS Code, it's the same thing. Hey, now I want to fix this issue. Okay, go ahead,
yeah,
and
yeah. I
keep
think
going.
that's where it's going, definitely.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay. As we're nearing the end here, you've already given lots of advice and talking about also non-techies and stuff. So, what would you advise somebody that's kind of in tech or maybe not, and has heard of AI, but it's kind of still on the fence, like, nah, you know what? I'll sit this one out. Let's see what the next thing is. What would
Mhm.
you say to them?
Well, I would, I guess, like I've recommended in a lot of things over time, is like give it a try in something small. Give it a try in something fun. Um, for instance, my younger daughter, has written a game for her college project. I said, "Hey,
Hmm.
let's sit at the kitchen counter and let's work on building a game, or let's build a website together." It is really helpful if you do have a nerdy friend who's already using stuff effectively. Just sit down together and solve a problem together. I think it is, don't focus on the, like, it's very easy to get caught up in the who's winning now in this race,
Yeah.
who's the biggest player, who's the, like, none of that matters. What works for you when you're solving a project? I do recommend using AI modes if it's Copilot Consumer, or if it's Google Gemini or whatever. Try using that instead of Google searches, and use it for all kinds of things. I use it for cooking recipes. I use it for figuring out, home repair problems, like just all sorts of things like that, right?
Yeah.
And so I feel like that is um, a good first step for consumers, is just instead of Google searches and kind of trial and error, use those sorts of things. And then for developers, I recommend trying a project, but thinking about it like you would in real professional software development. Meaning, don't say build me a website and then it builds a bad website and then you say AI is terrible. Think about like you communicate with a junior developer, right? And write up a detailed plan and then iterate through it. And the same way that you would kind of build trust with a new developer, where you wouldn't say, go build an entire project. I'll check when you're done. Say like, implement the first thing, implement this. And, and then over time, as you build up that velocity, then you say, okay, now spec out phase 2, implement phase 2, and kind of step
Yeah.
back as you go. And one final thing is, for enterprises, for people wanting to use this in production environments, focus on quality things that you haven't been doing, like unit tests, like documentation, like architectural reviews, like performance analysis, benchmarks, things like that are not going to break your application, but are likely to actually improve your quality. And once you get familiar with those and comfortable with those, that also makes it easier to implement AI, because you've got all those safety nets of, your unit tests and, all those, even documentation. AI can read your documentation to build better code, right? So if you have good quality docs, that improves your velocity there too.
Okay. That's great. Yeah, that's great stuff. Okay, thank you very much. So where can people go and connect with you?
That's a trickier thing. um, Social media's got a little crazy. I'm on Blue Sky mostly. I've been thinking about getting more involved in LinkedIn kind of in the future. But and then, also at conferences, whenever I'm at conferences, I love to chat with people, come up and say hi. So
Okay.
yeah, I guess those are,
Real world preference, yeah.
yep.
That's good. Just go and say hi. That's we will do that.
There you go.
Excellent. All right, and thank you very much for this conversation.
This was great. Thanks, Barry.